I've got Earl Grey tea, mango soda water, and 2 ginger cookies. And we're gonna talk about 10 of my favorite books after I eat these. Okay, so I am planning on putting up a few bonus videos throughout the month of December, and I thought for the first one I could talk about 10 of my favorite books of all time. I'm also thinking of doing a bookshelf tour, even though my books are literally all over the house at this point. So let me know if you would be interested in that. I rarely have physical books in my hand that have already been read, because once books get read, they go up onto my book ledge, so they're kind of out of reach and it's very inconvenient. I tried to grab these down earlier today and I could not reach without the full-size ladder, so I had to wait for Shane to come home and grab them down for me. But here we are. I actually have most of them to hold up and show you, which is so nice. I also think that I'm gonna do a video talking about my favorite reads from this year, 2025. I'll probably do that at the beginning of January. I didn't want to do it right now, so there's a couple picks in here that are from this year, but I think most of them are from prior years, but that video will be coming. I would say that these are all 6-star reads. Some of them are books that really got me back into the hobby of reading because they were just that good. I feel like I have a good amount of 5-star reads, but my 6 stars are the books that really left a mark on me. Like, I can really remember how I felt when I was reading them. I can usually remember the time of year that I read them. Like, they just had such an impact that it's like a whole feeling associated with them, and I can just remember the reading experience so vividly. They're usually emotional. I think about them often, and they've just become a part of me. So we have a variety of genres here. I feel like it's a pretty good mix, honestly, and it was hard to narrow it down to 10. But like I said, I have other videos coming, and if I go through all of the books that I have up there, then you'll hear more of my thoughts on other books that I've read and loved. Okay, starting off strong with one of my favorite books of all time, Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. I actually originally read this on my Kobo. I loved it so much, but the North American cover is hideous for this book, which is a crime. So I ended up ordering this from the UK. This is a used copy. I haven't actually read this copy, but it's like pretty beat up already, but that's okay. I'm just so happy to have this cover art. The next time that I reread this, I will read in this copy, which will be really fun, and I can annotate it and stuff. This book follows a couple, Leah and Miri, whose relationship starts to decay after Leah returns from a deep sea mission that went wrong. Leah was on a research dive for work, and the mission was only supposed to last a few weeks, but they didn't end up returning for 6 months. So her wife, Miri, was very relieved when Leah was finally returning home, but once she did, she quickly realized that something was different about her. This is a literary horror novel. I would say that it leans more literary and just kind of weird fiction. I wouldn't say that this book is scary at all. It's more just kind of bizarre and sad. What I loved about this book most is the way that Julia Armfield writes. She has just such an incredible way with words. She can make the most mundane moments so profound. And that's a lot of what this book is Miri reminiscing and remembering all of those small, insignificant, everyday moments that you share with your partner and how much she misses just those daily things. The inside cover says, "It's a story of falling in love, loss, grief, and what there is in the deep, deep sea." So many of y'all know how much I love books with a watery setting, and I also love books about grief. So this is just like the ultimate combo for me, plus those elements of horror and just like weirdness in it as well. Something else that's really interesting in the way that this story is told is that you do get dual POV from both of them, and Leah's chapters are when she is under the sea. So you're kind of getting a glimpse of what the heck happened down there, because something happened since she came back completely changed. And the sections of the book are broken up into like as you're descending down into the sea. So we have the sunlight zone, and then we venture into the twilight zone, the midnight zone, and so on. And the first sentence of this book is so good. It says, "The deep sea is a haunted house, a place in which things that ought not to exist move about in the darkness." Like, are you joking me? I'm sold. Just from that one line, I was like, ooh, I'm locking in. I truly think about this book all the time, and I was especially thinking about it when I was going through my own mental health struggles, and how this book can be an allegory for going through mental health struggles within a relationship, or watching your partner be swallowed up by depression or other mental health issues. I felt like a wife under the sea myself. I'm definitely due for a reread of this, and I truly cannot recommend this enough. Like, it is so good. Yeah, her writing just conjures such an achy feeling. It's just, yeah. And the ending of this, oh, it did me in. The ending of most of these did me in. Okay, moving on to one of my other top favorite novels of all time, which is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I think it's actually said Piranesi or Piranesi maybe, but I've always said Piranesi, and now I'm too used to calling it that I can't undo it. So this is the copy that I originally read. Just the regular copy already is stunning in my opinion, but I did treat myself to the Folio Society special edition last year because I just love this book that much. This one is illustrated, which is absolutely stunning. And yeah, it's just such a beautiful copy to have. I don't even know how I would classify this into a genre, but if I had to call it something, I would call it a soft fantasy thriller? Question mark. This book truly hit me like a bus. I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. I bought this because I just kept hearing different people recommend it. So I decided to pick it up at the bookstore one day and was immediately just so enraptured by the character of Piranesi and this world that Susanna Clarke has built. We follow Piranesi as he navigates life in this massive labyrinthine house that he lives in. It is full of corridor upon corridor, strange statues, and there's also the ocean in the bottom of this house. Yes, so Piranesi has to do things like track the tides so that he can avoid flooding. But he enjoys doing this. He has a thirst for knowledge and is always exploring this strange house. There is only one other person in this house occasionally with him called the Other. The Other wants Piranesi to help him uncover what he calls a great and secret knowledge. This is where the mystery thriller element comes in here, as Piranesi starts to uncover some terrible truths. When I first started reading this, I was like, what in the world is going on? It's just a very strange reading experience. I wish that I could read it again for the first time. The audiobook is phenomenal, but I definitely recommend, at least on your first read, to pick up a physical or ebook copy, because there are interesting things in the text, like seemingly random words are capitalized, and yeah, I just think you get that little bit extra when you read it physically. It is a little bit jarring at first, but just keep on going. My favorite part of this book is the dedication to the character of Piranesi, and this is why I feel like other books that are marketed as being similar to Piranesi, just because they include like a labyrinthine house or something like that, miss the mark, is because this character cannot be replicated, and I feel like Piranesi himself is what makes this book so special. Yes, the setting and everything else that's in here is interesting, but it is the character in here that is so unique and so inspiring. He is so full of awe and childlike wonder. It genuinely impacted me and made me view the world differently. It's just such a beautiful book. It's a masterpiece. I will continue rereading and rereading this book because I just adore it so much. Okay, let's do one that I have read a little bit more recently, The God of the Woods. This is a historical literary thriller, and this is one of the books that made me realize my love for literary thrillers. This takes place in the Adirondack Mountains from the 1950s to 1975, I think, and you get multiple POVs and multiple timelines, so it can seem like a lot at first. Like, I was intimidated to read this book, but I was pleasantly surprised by how easy it was to follow and to keep track of the timelines and the characters and everything. I'm bad with a lot of characters, but I did not struggle with this at all. I was just so incredibly invested in it. But for that reason, I think that this would be better as a physical read. I feel like audio I would have struggled with a little bit. The reason that I love literary thrillers is because I love the compelling nature of a mystery slash thriller and the kind of more fast pacedness of that, but you don't have to sacrifice the depth of the characters or the emotions in the story. This book follows the wealthy Van Laar family. They own a summer camp, and in the summer of 1975, their 13-year-old daughter actually goes missing from the summer camp. This is especially shocking because her brother also went missing from the summer camp like 14 years ago. So a search begins for her, and with that, we start to unravel some of the dark secrets that the Van Laar family has been hiding. The layers and the detail in this story were so incredibly well done. How there was so many different, like I said, timelines and characters, but then it all just wrapped up so nicely at the end and made sense. It was a very satisfying read, and I honestly just found it so compelling. Like, I could not tear myself away from this book when I was reading it. I read this at the end of summer, I think in September a year ago, and I feel like that was the perfect time of year to read this, or any time during the summer, honestly, because like I said, much of this is set in and around a summer camp. And you get a lot of like outdoorsy vibes from this. So my favorite thing about this one is the impressive reach of this story through time, and how I would finish one chapter and immediately want to get into the next one. Oh, I have a little note in here. Sometimes I will write my thoughts as I'm reading, and this one says the alternating POVs are done so well because it creates a lot of tension and intrigue. And I remember that feeling. Like I said, I would finish a chapter and then I would immediately, because it would give you like a little bit more information, and then you'd have to go to the next person's chapter, and then you'd eventually like come back to the other person, and yeah, it was just so good. I had a note in here, or is it just a tab? Oh, it's just a tab, I think. Okay, back to one of the books that got me back into reading. I know that this book is so hyped up, but it's for good reason, trust me. The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This is a fantasy novel. Heavy on the romance though, and that is why I like this book, surprisingly, because y'all know I'm not a romance reader, but this was just done so well, and it was sad. I love romance when it's sad or when there's grief involved. I just had to include this one because to this day, this is the book that has given me the most severe book hangover. Like, I was unwell when I finished this book, and I was thinking about it for days and days. I did not want to pick up another book because I was just so stuck on this one. I'm actually not much of a fantasy reader either, so this has fantasy and it has romance, two of my least read genres. But the relationship between these characters and the writing was so exquisite and emotional. This is an Iliad retelling. I don't really know much at all about Greek mythology, but I was still able to fully enjoy this, so I don't really think that you need to know much about it going into this. Okay, my battery died, but this follows Achilles, who is the son of a king and a goddess, and Patroclus, who is of lesser status than Achilles, and he's also been exiled from his home. They end up developing a relationship, and we follow them as they are training and fighting in the Trojan War. This love story between these characters is so beautiful and so tender, and like I said, I had the worst book hangover. The end of this book absolutely took me out, okay? Like sobbing. There are scenes in this book that are just burned in my brain that I think about often, and Madeline Miller just has such an incredible way with words, which is One of my favorite things about this book, the lyrical writing and the beautiful love story that we get within this. Okay, let's do one that I don't have a physical copy of, which is Notes on an Execution by Danya Kukafka. I actually read this on my Kobo, and it's another literary thriller. This was such an unexpected find for me as well, and it's funny because a lot of my favorite books, I'm not like, they just kind of blindside me, which is kind of fun. But this was a book club pick that somebody suggested from my book club, and it ended up winning the poll, so that's what we read in January, I think, like almost a full year ago now. So yes, another literary thriller, and this one also weaves between timelines and we get POVs from different characters. So I guess that is also something that I like. I'm finding that as a pattern, a literary thriller with like multiple POVs. Same with Wild Dark Shore. That was another one that I really loved this year that you'll probably hear me talk about in my favorites of 2025. But I guess that is just something that really works for me. So this book follows a serial killer who is currently on death row, but his story is told through the eyes of different women throughout his life, starting with his mother. So this is a story about a serial killer, yes, but it takes him off the pedestal, out of the spotlight, and instead focuses on the women that he's impacted through all of his actions. I found this on Goodreads. It says, Notes on an Execution presents a chilling portrait of womanhood as it simultaneously unravels the familiar narrative of the American serial killer, interrogating our system of justice and our cultural obsession with crime stories, asking readers to consider the false promise of looking for meaning in the psyches of violent men. And I feel like that sums up what this book is about so well. This book literally had me crying at 12% in and at multiple other times throughout the story. And I feel like something that it did so incredibly well was evoke empathy for all of the characters, including the serial killer. Like, it was just that well written. I know that sounds messed up, but it really did such a good job of highlighting the complexities of life that lead people in certain directions and impact, like how some people are just kind of doomed from the start, which is sad to say, but it is true in a lot of cases. I feel like the story just did such a good job of showing how truly complicated life is. It was absolutely incredible. The writing was so good, and I will be immediately picking up whatever Danya Kukafka puts out next. Like, I will be first in line. Okay, next let's talk about Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This is a really popular book. It's another literary thriller, and it moved me so much when I read it years ago now. Not that long, probably like 4 years ago. This book is set in North Carolina in the 1950s and 1960s, I believe. And we're following our main character, Kaya, who lives alone in the marshland where she was abandoned by her parents. She learns to fend for herself, and she lives a really isolated life because she finds solace in nature rather than other people. She kind of has a fear of other people. The book is dual timeline, and in the later timeline, we're following Kaya on trial for the murder of a man who was found dead in the marsh. All of the town people kind of turned against her and figured, oh, it must be the weird marsh girl that did this. I truly could not put this book down when I read it. I feel like it has such a magic to it. It's a love letter to the natural world. It's emotional, and the mystery element is really compelling as well. I know that there's a movie of this out now too, which I thought was just okay. To be honest, it was a little bit disappointing after reading this book. So even if you've seen the movie, I recommend picking up the book because it didn't do a good job of capturing what's inside these pages. My favorite part about this book was just Kaya's character and all of the lessons that she learned from the wilderness and nature. I was also so unwell after I finished this one. It's a running theme with almost all of them. Speaking of unwell, Crying in H Mart by Zauner. This is a memoir. I do love a memoir. I don't know why I haven't read that many this year, but I do really love them, and my favorite way to consume them is via audiobook because they're often narrated by the author, and I feel like it just adds such a personal element to the story. I mean, it's already personal, obviously, but like another layer of personal. This book is largely about grief, but it's also about cultural identity, parent-child relationships. I have memories of breaking down and just sobbing while listening to this and doing random things around my house, like cooking dinner, and I would just be like crying listening to this because it was so raw and emotional. Michelle shares her story of being 25 years old and finding out that her mom was diagnosed with terminal cancer. It follows her taking in that news and also taking care of her mother in her final days while reflecting on her identity as a Korean American woman and all of the memories that she's had with her mother, good and bad. Their relationship was complicated at times, but something that always bonded them together was food, so that also plays a really big role in this book. What I love most about this book is just how raw and honest it felt. I truly felt like I was reading the author's diary at times. It was just that vulnerable. I find that I'm really drawn to stories about grief. It's a theme that I often find myself enjoying reading about and that I'm always going back to, and I think it's just because it feels so human. Grief is something that all of us will experience at one point or another. So I guess the vulnerability of that feels connecting. But yeah, this was amazing. Highly recommend listening to that on audio. Okay, next we have another book that I read this year, but this one just stands out so much to me. I think that it has become one of my all-time favorite reads, and that is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is a gothic classic, and I was very intimidated to read this because I mostly read contemporary, as you can see, but I found this really easy to follow. Obviously the writing style is different, but I found it really enjoyable to slow down and be immersed in all of the descriptions of Manderley and just to really savor every part of this story. So I highly recommend this if you are looking to dip your toe into classics. I feel like this is a great place to start, especially if you want something that is more gothic. This book had me having afternoon tea and a little snack platter to enjoy while I could just relish in the beautiful descriptions in this novel. This definitely has a melancholic type feel to it. I feel like it's a perfect winter read, or spring even, because there's a lot of descriptions of the flowers and stuff like that. So this follows our main character who receives a marriage proposal from a well-off widower called Maxim de Winter. She moves into his estate with him and quickly finds that the place seems to be haunted by the memory of his last wife, and her husband seems to be as well. Rebecca seems to be in every corner, every piece of clothing, every drawer, and on everybody's minds. My favorite part about this book was just the atmosphere. Like I said, it feels melancholic, it feels tense, and there was so much detail. I felt like I could just feel that in myself. Like I could feel the tension and envision the description so vividly. I don't want to spoil anything because I was pleasantly surprised at the direction this book went in. So that's all I'm gonna say, but highly recommend Rebecca. Okay, and then I do have one contemporary horror on this list, which is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kliewer. This is one of my all-time horror books, and this, to this day, is one of the only, if not the only book I've ever read that has legitimately scared me. This is another one that I highly recommend grabbing a physical copy because it is mixed media, so there's even already just at the front like things to see, and wait a second, there is like different documents and websites, resources, and things that pop up, and there is also Morse code to solve throughout the book, which I thought was a really fun interactive element. I could make a whole video talking about my favorite horror books because it is one of my favorite genres, so maybe I will do that in the future. This follows a couple called Charlie and Eve, and they just moved into a new house that they're planning on renovating and then selling. One night they get a knock on the door and there's a man standing there with his family behind him, and he says, "I grew up in this house, can I come in and show my family? I would really love to show them what it looks like." Eve is the one that answered the door, and she immediately gets bad vibes, but she doesn't want to say no to him and let them down, so she ends up letting them inside. Bad idea. things very quickly get weird and spooky, and this family does not want to leave their house. This is one of those books where you are questioning your sanity alongside the main character. You don't really know what is truth, what is reality, what is going on. That is my favorite thing about this book. I have since learned that those elements that I enjoyed in this story are called cosmic horror. Cosmic horror is a subgenre of horror that features existential dread, the vastness of the universe, fear of the unknown, strange creatures that seem as though they couldn't exist. It's a very like it's like existential dread essentially, and like spiraling and losing your mind. So I found that that's one of my favorite types of horror, and that is also the type of horror that genuinely scares me. So it's nice for me to hear people classify this as cosmic horror, because now I know to look out for that in future books, since it's something that I really like. But yeah, this book gets weird. Like I said, there are scenes in this book that actually scared me, and this is one that I was definitely reading during the daytime. Also, this author is local to me. He lives in Vancouver and is releasing a new book in 2026, and I cannot wait. Oh, and this is being adapted to a Netflix movie, which is exciting. Hopefully they won't butcher it, but we shall see. And then lastly, I have another memoir to talk about, which is The Glass Castle by Jeannette Walls. I love an emotional book, okay? I do. And The Glass Castle truly gutted me. I had seen the movie years ago, so I roughly knew what it was about, but the book it blew me away. It was so incredibly well done, so emotional. It was an emotional roller coaster, honestly, because it had me laughing, it had me crying. It had me really thinking about the morality of the characters' decisions, and it really had me thinking about things on a deeper level in terms of what unfolded in this story. Again, I listened to this via audio, and it was so well done, so I highly recommend the audiobook. I like to mention how I consumed the books, because I don't feel like one way, like in general in reading, I don't feel like one way is superior, but I do feel like some books are better told via audio and some books are better consumed with your eyeballs. At least that's been my experience. So the author Jeannette Walls tells her story about growing up with dysfunctional parents and having to be largely self-sufficient. Her dad was an alcoholic and her mom was a free-spirited artist type. Neither of them wanted to conform to society, which ended up in their children being largely neglected. But like any family, the relationships and the emotions are complicated and complex. For example, when her father wasn't drinking, he was brilliant, charismatic, interesting, and fun. This led to a lifetime of complicated relationships between the family members, and this book documents that. It documents her childhood and also when she got older. And it truly chewed me up and spit me out. I cried at so many times in this book, and it was just so incredibly well written. It was truly such a unique and vibrant story while being really sad at times. And I just thought that it was so incredible. If you like books like Educated, I think that you would also really like this one. Again, this is another story that just kind of highlights how complicated human life can be and human connection can be, and leads you to empathize with different characters in the story, and question why they are the way that they are. It was a stunning character study, honestly. If you haven't read The Glass Castle, I highly recommend. And I think that is it, y'all. Is that all my books? Yes, that is 10 of my all-time favorite books. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that you found a new read for your TBR. I'm super excited to be putting some extra videos up this month. If there is something that you want to see from me that's more of a like topic sit down style video, or it doesn't necessarily have to be sit down, I guess, but more of just like a topic rather than a vlog, comment down below in the not in the description, in the comments, and I will potentially add that to my list. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end of this, I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.